My name is Sam Teets, and today I'm filling in as the solo host for Mike Goodpasser. He texted me about an hour ago saying he had something come up, so he's not going to be available today. It's just going to be me, which means it seems kind of fitting going into a very hectic and crazy Wednesday where everything in the NFL has just been thrown off so much by this Baltimore Steelers game that keeps getting postponed and rescheduled. Originally, this was scheduled for Thanksgiving, got pushed back to Sunday. Now it's a Tuesday. Now actually it's a Wednesday. It's a Wednesday at 3:40, so it's starting up here in about maybe 2.5 hours or so. And it's gonna be a really crazy game, obviously, because all the players are not going to be available. We talk about Baltimore. Baltimore's been cleared to play, by the way. They have no positive tests today. They're already in Pittsburgh for the game. So this game is going to happen. The NFL is giving the go-ahead for it. And Baltimore, of course, is going to be without Lamar Jackson. It sounds like they're going to be without Mark Andrews. They're probably going to be without Calais Campbell, Matt Judon. Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins were clear. They could technically come back today if they wanted to. But Baltimore is going to likely err on the side of caution. They're not going to be available for today's game. They've been officially declared out. So no Mark Ingram, no J.K. Dobbins. I don't think their starting center is going to be available either. No Matt Skura. And, the offensive line it's been blown up pretty much since last year. No starting center now. Ronnie Stanley, of course, is done for the year. Marshall Young retired. So the offensive line's a mess for Baltimore. And on the Pittsburgh side of things, got a little interesting today. We already knew they were going to be without Stephon Tuitt. Defensive end is having a career year. We already knew they were going to be without starting running back James Conner. Maurkice Pouncey, the starting center, multi-time Pro Bowler, potential future Hall of Famer, he's been ruled out today. He's been put on the COVID-19 reserve list. And that's very shocking to come out right now. The game is coming up in a couple hours here, and he was just put on the list. It was just revealed today. We don't know if it's because he tested positive or he was in close contact with someone that tested positive. I don't know the exact reason why he's put on the COVID list, but this is huge. And maybe not necessarily for today's game because Robert Griffin III is starting for Baltimore and because they're missing their top two running backs, so maybe it's not as big of a deal for today's game. But Pittsburgh has to go and play Washington next week. Washington has a really good defensive line, really good defensive front. That's a Monday game. So you're possibly without Maurkice Pouncey today against Baltimore and then against the Washington football team. So that's pretty big, and you might not have had this situation happen. You might not have had this situation happen had there been a serious instance where, let me just connect this for a second. This might never have happened if you get into a situation where, you play the game when it's scheduled to be played. But now you have all these positive tests, and now Maurkice Pouncey ends up on the COVID list the day of the game. Within hours of the game, we're just finding out. But this is a very crazy game, very hectic how it's all played out. I think the NFL deserves some blame for this because they handled this the wrong way possible. Going into it when they originally had rescheduled it after Sunday, there was no way the NFL could schedule this to make this a worse situation than they already had. And they did by deciding to play the game on Wednesday at 3:40 because they couldn't play the game late because they had the New York Christmas tree ceremony or something like that. So in Times Square. So it's really weird how this is all played out. I don't think the NFL has handled this very well. And if you're really talking about player safety and player safety being the main priority for the NFL, I don't think this game gets played at all. So to me, it's a little hypocritical from the league, but that's not anything shocking coming from the NFL. I would still pick Pittsburgh in this game just because Pittsburgh has far fewer starters on the COVID list. We're in a situation right now where most of their stars are not on the COVID list. It's only Tuitt that I know of. It's only Pouncey, Tuitt, and Conner. Everyone else should be available. And that gives them a huge boost against Baltimore. Granted, anything can happen in this rivalry game. John Harbaugh is a fantastic coach for the Ravens. I give him a lot of credit. RG3 is a former Pro Bowler. There's a lot that could still happen in this game because it's a rivalry game between two of the best teams in football. And this can always change what's going to happen. I'm leaning towards Pittsburgh, though. They had the most stars available, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So I think that Pittsburgh's going to prevail in this game, remain undefeated, and roll the next week against Washington. Hopefully get Maurkice Pouncey back before that game. We'll find out. And really at this point, we're just kind of playing it by ear because of all the crazy things that have been going on here. This is the world we're living in right now with COVID-19 and with the NFL and pro sports. It's kind of a just play it by ear situation. It sounds like all the games this year are going to get played, and I would predict that they all will get played, regardless of whether the competition level is not going to be at the level we expect it sometimes, especially for this game. We're hoping this would be an epic showdown, an epic rematch from a game earlier this year that came out to the wire, and we're probably not going to get that because of COVID-19. I think we have to be willing to accept that in a couple of games this year during the regular season. Once it comes to the postseason, there's absolutely no way that would be considered acceptable, of course, because it would totally wash out all the competitiveness of the game when you have a situation like what happened with Denver and New Orleans. But for now, we have to put up with this. This is going to happen once or twice. Maybe it's going to happen once to every team. Who knows? And it seems that some teams don't have avoided this kind of situation in general, and they're lucky for that. So, but it sucks. It does. But really, we can move on. We can continue with the season. Pittsburgh might be undefeated after today. Baltimore is fighting for the playoff lives. It's unfortunate for them. But we're going to have to continue on with the season. And Baltimore still has a chance, by the way, to make the playoffs even after this mess up. Because even if they lose today, which like I said, I'm saying they will. If they lose today, the next couple of games, they play the Cowboys, they play the Browns, Jaguars, Giants, Bengals. That should be 5 wins. This team is a very talented team still. I mean, even with the COVID stuff, even with all the COVID people missing from the roster, I still think they would beat Dallas. I mean, I still think they would beat Jacksonville. I still think they could beat the Giants and even the Bengals with this roster. The only question mark is the Browns. By the way, they destroyed the Browns in week 1, 30-6. The Browns just barely beat the Jaguars this past week. I think that Baltimore has a chance of finishing the season with 5 consecutive wins. And if that's the case, I mean, if they lose today, they would still have 11 wins on the season. It would still be 11-5. So Baltimore, to me, is still a playoff team. They're better than Cleveland, even though the Browns have a better record momentarily. The Ravens are still a very good team. And I think they'll rebound from this well. It's unfortunate this had to happen to them, of course. And we saw a situation with Denver over the weekend. Of course, Denver is now a playoff caliber team, but Baltimore is, so it's a little bit more eye-popping, I guess you could say, in terms of catching the headlines and all the situations going on around the league. But I would still pick the Steelers in this game, and I would still pick the Baltimore Ravens to make the playoffs. Now, Mike did set up a few captions here he probably wanted me to run through before we get to our NFL Power Rankings, which I do have the article for. The article for my NFL Power Rankings was published this morning on thegruelingtruth.com. You can go there right now. It should be up on the front page. If it's not, just search Sam Teets and that Grueling Truth author, and it should pop up, be the first article available from me. But we'll get into that in a second. Right now, I do want to bring up one thing that Mike had here in the captions. Doug Peterson is on the hot seat in Philadelphia, and the answer is absolutely yes. Everyone in Philadelphia is on the hot seat, and Doug Peterson especially, because Carson Wentz has had a bad year. He's had a very bad year. Leading the NFL in interceptions, this guy, he's making reads that I don't understand. Like, Carson Wentz was a top 10 quarterback to me before the season. He had some very good years. He had the season he was going to be the league MVP before getting hurt, obviously. And it's kind of been turning down a little bit since that season, honestly. This was still a top 10 quarterback entering the year, though, and now he's been almost completely ruined by the way Doug Peterson is running and calling this offense right now. It's shocking how much he has regressed this season. He's regressing at a level you would expect from a player who's 35, 36 years old. Carson Wentz is not that old. So to me, it's stunning how much he's declined over this year. I blame a lot of it on general manager Howie Roseman and his pathetic drafting. Because let's be honest, you draft Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins. You drafted him over those guys. You also decided to not trade up for CeeDee Lamb, and you take Jalen Reagor instead, an athletic product, an athletic playmaker, but someone who's not a polished receiver. T. Higgins is a polished receiver. Justin Jefferson is a polished receiver. He's going to be a Pro Bowler this year. CeeDee Lamb is a polished receiver. He's going to be a Pro Bowler in the future. Jalen Reagor might not even be a 600-yard receiver at his peak, depending on how his progression goes. So to me, that's a pathetic mistake, taking J.J. Arcega-Whiteside in the draft, not this past season, but last year, or guys like DK Metcalf, that's a mistake. There are so many mistakes here on Howie Roseman, especially picking on the offensive side of the ball. The only guys I can remember in recent history that's gotten who have really hit, Dallas Goedert to me is a future Pro Bowl tight end. Miles Sanders, a future Pro Bowl running back. Other than that, there have been so many misses. So general manager Howie Roseman deserves a lot of the blame for the makeup of this team and the struggle in offense. And then, of course, Doug Peterson. The play call is absolutely horrendous. The play calling is putting Carson Wentz in the worst possible position to succeed. And Carson Wentz is, of course, taking the bait every time. Now, granted, he could be making better decisions in those situations, but Carson Wentz is jumping on the bait, jumping on the bomb every single time to end up, basically throwing interceptions, making turnovers, ending up in bad situations where he's going to lose. And hang on, I do have a message from Bobby Sheridan here. I do see you there, Bobby, on Twitter. Hit from -10 to 10.5 points, and the over from 42 to 42.5 have gotten game day money. Frank Wright leaving was a huge factor in Philly decline, and you're absolutely right there. Frank Wright was crucial for them, and he's done fairly well in Indianapolis. He's had maybe some up and down time with the Colts. And understandably so, because the quarterback situation after Andrew Luck, I mean, they were set up to fail when Andrew Luck left the way he did. And that's no offense to Andrew Luck. I mean, you got to do what you got to do to stay healthy. So I have full respect for Andrew Luck. But at the same point, Frank Reich expected to have an MVP caliber quarterback for the next 10 years, and he didn't get that. The fact that he still got his team competing for a playoff right now, while Doug Peterson's team is not winning the worst division possibly in NFL history, despite having Carson Wentz, despite having all those pieces they have on the offense and defense, is shocking. It's very telling about where these two guys stand in terms of their stature within the NFL. So to me, Frank Reich is obviously a better play caller than Doug Peterson. He's working with guys like Jacoby Brissett and Philip Rivers the past 2 years. Doug Peterson's working with Carson Wentz, a guy who should be infinitely better than those guys right now. And he's setting him up to fail. Of course, like I said, Carson Wentz is still making very bad decisions and still trying to play too much hero ball and at times holding the ball for too long. But that's also got to be pinned on the personnel around him. The offensive line is so banged up. I mean, Jason Peters is a starter for your offensive line. Jason Peters is almost, how old is he? Let me look it up real quick. Jason Peters has got to be pushing 40 years old at this point. He peaked like almost a half a decade ago. You'd say he peaked a decade ago, actually, at this point, because he is 38 years old and 315 days. So he's coming up on 39 years old. This guy's last first team All-Pro selection was in 2013. His last Pro Bowl was in 2016. So this guy is half a decade removed from being, in my mind, a player who would be starting on a Super Bowl caliber team. He's possibly a future Hall of Famer, don't get me wrong. But at the same point, you got to sit back and consider here, what are we working with on this offensive line? No Lane Johnson. Lane Johnson's done for the year. Jason Kelce, who's already talked about retirement for the past couple of seasons, he's been an all-pro center, been the best center in the league the past 3 years. But he's starting to decline, starting to deal with injuries, show a little bit of age. This line, and then Brandon Brooks tore his Achilles before the season even started, by the way, and he's an all-pro caliber guard. So this line is so banged up. He's not getting bought a lot of time here, realistically. And they're not running the ball enough to the point where they can say, we can put him in play action here, because you're not running the ball quite a lot. And Miles Sanders is a very good running back, but you don't have the line to block for him. And frankly, you're just not giving him enough touches. So it's putting a lot more of the onus on Carson Wentz. And then the receivers, guys like Alshon Jeffrey, Greg Ward. I like Greg Ward, don't get me wrong, but this is a guy who was a college quarterback, converted to wide receiver in the NFL. This is not a Justin Jefferson. This is not a CeeDee Lamb, not a T. Higgins, not a DeAndre Hopkins, not a DK Metcalf, or an A.J. Brown, or Terry McLaurin. So you got J.J. Arthur-Whiteside, you got Alshon Jeffrey, you got Greg Ward, you got Jalen Reagor. These guys are not getting separation downfield. So Carson Wentz, if you're Carson Wentz, you have to hold the ball because your guys aren't getting separation. And there's also been play calls that have walked right into double teams where essentially the Eagles will pull extra players in pass protection and basically have 7 or 8 guys, 7 guys predetermined to run pass protection. The defense will only rush forward, and that really basically makes it really easy for defensive backs to double cover guys downfield. That's happened a couple times this season. And basically Carson Wentz ends up having to throw into double coverage because he's got no guys in single coverage down the field. Zach Ertz obviously succumbing to some injuries, his age. That's becoming a little bit of a problem there in Philadelphia as well. So Zach Ertz, I mean, I love Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz was playing right up there with guys like Travis Kelce, and George Kittle for a little while there. But this injury certainly becomes a factor. And he's, like I said, getting up there in age, so maybe you can't count on him as much going forward. So now you take Zach Ertz out of the equation. You don't have any real number 1 wide receivers. You arguably don't even have a number 2 receiver on your team, except maybe Travis Fulgham. And there's no option for Carson Wentz. There's no way this guy succeeds with the way Doug Peterson is calling plays. To me, Doug Peterson has to be going here within the next 2 years unless things turn around. I say you give him 1 more year. Give him 1 more year. The automatic response, the knee-jerk reaction is to fire him immediately. And I understand that because he's been horrible this season. And there apparently are rumors that he's clashing with ownership right now, and there have been issues there. The owner wants to play Jalen Hurts apparently more. And of course, Doug Peterson doesn't want to play Jalen Hurts because he's not ready, which is totally understandable. It's just that I think you got to give him 1 more year. This is a Super Bowl winning head coach, formerly Super Bowl winning head coach. You have pieces here. You've got some good roster components. I think you give him 1 more season. And if things fall apart then, well, let's be honest, even if you fired him this year, things weren't going to get better between this year and next year anyways. So you just fire him next season if it goes poorly. You're basically in the same spot you would have been if you fired him this year. So I don't think it's a big deal. I think you got to look more at the general manager, Howie Roseman, and see what he's done so far with contracts and with free agent signings and with the draft. I think you have to look at him more than Doug Peterson this year. But I could see them try to clean house, honestly, after next season if things continue going poorly. The only one I could say would be sticking around would be Carson Wentz, because right now he's got a massive contract, and no one's going to be trading for that contract. Not even Chicago. Chicago, who desperately need a quarterback and have a solid defense for now, they're not going to be trading for Carson Wentz's contract because of the size of it. So really, we're thinking about it. Carson Wentz isn't going anywhere anytime soon. You're in a very rough situation there with Philadelphia, and your cap situation is so horrible going into next season already that you could not afford to take the dead cap on from cutting or trading Carson Wentz anyways. So Wentz is going to be there next year. I would expect Doug Peterson to be there as well. And real quick, now we're in the middle of the show, I'd like to remind you that the Grueling Truth is sponsored by Manscaped.com. You can use promo code TGC20 at Manscaped.com, get 20% off your first order and free shipping. It helps out. It helps out the show quite a bit. It helps out the website quite a bit and the Facebook page. This is primarily a way we can get some money and get some cash flow in here. And like I said, if we get enough orders at a certain time, they will become a full-time sponsor, and we very much would appreciate that, obviously. And again, promo code TG20, use it at Manscaped.com. They have products. Obviously, you know what this is used for. I don't have to tell you. But you can use it in any part of your body. You can use it for a beard, back, whatever you want to shave. There are plenty of opportunities there, and they do have some very interesting little kits. It's a good product, high quality, and like I said, it's actually better and cheaper than what you can find in stores. So really consider that. That's a decent option for you. And I just realized I'm saying this really loud, and there's someone working in another room right next door, maybe on a conference call. So that could be very interesting. I might have to explain that a little bit later. But right now, let's get into the NFL Power Rankings. I did write this article. It's up on the Grueling Truth page, the Grueling Truth website right now. Go ahead, you can search my name plus the Grueling Truth, and it should be the first thing that pops up. Number 1, Kansas City. I think Kansas City is the most dominant team in the NFL right now, and it's not even close for me. Kansas City is the best team. They've got Carson Wentz. I'm thinking about Carson Wentz, and I've got Patrick Mahomes. He's the best quarterback. I've got Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, arguably best receiver and tight end combo in the NFL right now. They've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's just good enough to be a solid running back. They've got a decent offensive line. The defense is still questionable, but you have Tyrann Mathieu, you've got Frank Clark, you've got Chris Jones. You have pieces there that could succeed in clutch situations. To me, the Kansas City Chiefs are the most unstoppable team in the league. I know that the Raiders got very close to beating them recently, and they beat them earlier this year. I think that's just a bad matchup for Kansas City. Other than that, the Chiefs seem very dominant. And I know they only beat the Buccaneers by about 1 score, but really it never felt like that game was in question. The Chiefs are the top team in the NFL. Number 2, I almost knocked them down a spot. Number 2, I have the New Orleans Saints. And this is predicated on the idea that Drew Brees is coming back. If he does not come back, then we're in a tough situation. If you're talking about Taysom Hill going to the playoffs as starting quarterback, then I think you start to wonder whether the Saints belong in the top 5. They have a very good defense with Cam Jordan anchoring the defensive line. They got Marshall Lattimore in the secondary. They got Demario Davis at linebacker. They have an uber-talented team. They've got a great offensive line. They got Alvin Kamara. They have Michael Thomas. They have so many weapons. It's hard to imagine this team not being a top 5 team, but if you don't have Drew Brees, I think it really lowers the quality of this team. Taysom Hill, we saw against Denver, did not do great as a passer. And frankly, they game planned to run the ball quite a bit because they didn't want to expose Taysom Hill to Denver's secondary. Denver has a lot of good players in the secondary. Brice Callahan at cornerback, Kareem Jackson, Justin Simmons at safety. They did not want Taysom Hill trying to throw those guys, which is why they ran the ball so much when they played them this past weekend. So to me, the Saints are a top 5 team talent-wise. They're always going to be a top 3 team talent-wise. But Taysom Hill is your starter going into the playoffs. That's going to be a very rough deal instead of Drew Brees. You need to have Drew Brees back if you want to be considered a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Oh, I've been missing some. Sorry, guys, I've been missing some comments here. Greg Gorecki, longtime viewer of the show, says Steelers 35, Ravens 10. I think even if the Ravens make the playoffs, they may not go that far. And he also said the Eagles' offensive line is brutal. It really is. I mean, Carson Wentz is responsible for a lot of things going wrong in Philadelphia right now. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to defend him and say he's having a good year. He's not. He's been awful this season. Just looking at my quarterback power rankings, you will see that he's towards the bottom 10. He is in the bottom 10. But the offensive line certainly isn't helping. And as for the 35-10, you know what? I hope it's 35-10. I really do. But I have a feeling that Pittsburgh's going to play down to Baltimore a little bit here. It's going to be a much closer game than it should be, even though I'm picking Pittsburgh to win. You just never know with these kind of rivalry games. And I agree the Ravens are a team that if they make the playoffs, I don't know how far they can go. I love the coaching they have, but the play calling this year has not been there. I know the play calling was excellent last season. It has not been nearly as high quality this year. Lamar Jackson's obviously struggling quite a bit as well. And I think part of that is the fact that he's been put in an uncomfortable situation. There's some similarities here between Baltimore and Philadelphia. They have good quarterbacks. They have guys who should be top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL right now. The issue is that they've been put in bad situations. The play calling is not playing to their strengths. And also, the offensive line situation in Baltimore has not helped Lamar Jackson whatsoever. I think that's playing into the reason why he's struggling a little bit this year. He's not being able to run nearly as much. And I got Pittsburgh at number 3 in the NFL power rankings, 10-0. A little bit of an asterisk because they are playing today. I do want to figure out what's going to happen with them when they play Baltimore. Sorry, 1 second. I don't know how this game is going to play out. I predict Pittsburgh's going to win. I think they'll go to 11-0. They haven't faced the stiffest competition this season. Obviously, their biggest wins this year, Baltimore, Cleveland, Tennessee. They still play Indianapolis and Buffalo, which is going to be very interesting here in the final stretch of the year. Even the Washington game next week could be very interesting. I still view Pittsburgh as a top 3 team, though, and to me, there's a huge drop-off after this top 3 in the power rankings, but Pittsburgh undefeated, one of the best defenses in the NFL, almost top 3 in almost every category, leading the NFL in sacks despite playing one fewer game than most teams out there. The Steelers are a legitimate title contender. It's just a question of whether that offense will be able to score 35, 42 points against a team like Kansas City. Yes, you know Patrick Mahomes can do that against almost any defense, including Pittsburgh's. Number 4, the Tennessee Titans. The Titans had a huge win this past weekend against the Indianapolis Colts, putting them back atop the AFC South. Derrick Henry is the best pure running back in football. We're talking about the ability to get involved in the receiving game, probably not so much, but just in terms of pure running, old style, just grinding down defenses, just piling through guys, he is the best at that. And that's why I have them at number 4. Also, Ryan Tannehill, very underrated quarterback. Corey Davis and A.J. Brown have been excellent on offense for them at wide receiver. I still have questions about the defense. I don't think Tennessee's defense is that good, but we'll see how that works out in the future. I think they could maybe pull something off here. It's just going to be a question of, will they get that chance? Buffalo at number 5. This all comes down to Josh Allen for me. If Josh Allen is hot and having a good day, Buffalo could easily be number 4 and number 3. If Josh Allen's having a very difficult day or having a bad day, Buffalo is not even a top 10 team because this really comes down to him. They don't have a great running game. The receivers, Stephon Diggs is really good. Other than that, they don't have much of a great pass catcher that I'm really worried about. Defensively, they're up and down. Week to week, it really comes out to what's the defensive line doing. If they can get pressure, they're a very good defense. If they don't get any pressure, that defense gets exposed sometimes. So to me, Buffalo's a very up and down team. I still have them at number 5. But like I said, after number 3, there are a lot of teams with a lot of glaring weaknesses here, including the Green Bay Packers, who have not been able to stop the run up the middle this entire season. We even saw against Chicago this past weekend, the running back David Montgomery had over 100 yards, and he struggled all year. He still puts up over 100 yards against Green Bay Packers, which is kind of stunning, considering how talented Green Bay is supposed to be. Aaron Rodgers is phenomenal this year. He's having a great season. Devontae Adams as well. The issue becomes for me, Green Bay has so many holes defensively, and Jair Alexander is a great cornerback. They have Darnell Savage, they have Adrian Amos, so good secondary. But I just think the issues up front at the linebacker position could really become problematic for a team like the Packers, especially if they face a team that's really good at running the ball. Like, I don't know, Minnesota's not going to make the playoffs, but I would consider Minnesota because of Dalvin Cook. I think that could be very problematic for a team like the Packers. When you saw how they fared against the Buccaneers earlier this year, it was not pleasant. It was not a good ending. So I think there are serious holes here for the Vikings to consider. For the Green Bay Packers to consider. And then Seattle at number 7. The Seahawks have Russell Wilson. That's really carrying them through this year. The defense has been bad for a large part, but they're starting to pull together here, starting to figure out what Jamal Adams healthy and starting to really work in with guys like Shaquille Griffin and Quandre Jacobs. This defense should be much better than what it is, considering all the talent they have there with KJ Wright, Bobby Wagner. But Carlos Dunlap up front has been a huge force for them, really accelerating the growth and development of this defensive line. A lot of young guys up there are getting more involved because of him. I think Seattle, if the defense continues improving, could climb up towards the number 5 spot, but for now, I have them at number 7. Number 8, I have the Raiders. The Raiders fell back quite a bit. I thought they were a top 5 team last week after how they performed against the Kansas City Chiefs, and then they came out and stunk it up against the Atlanta Falcons. Got beat by like 37 points or something like that. And this was the Falcons team that just got slam dunked on by Taysom Hill and the New Orleans Saints. So to me, the Raiders fell back quite a few spots here. Derek Carr turned the ball over 4 times, and this is my issue with the Raiders. They're very much also a week-to-week team. And that defense for Las Vegas, it's not very good. So the Raiders are a team that I have a lot of issues with. But as I said, I have a lot of issues with all his teams except for the top three. Number 9, the Rams. They still have a good defense, but I think they struggled against Mullins to some degree. And also the offense just wasn't helping whatsoever. Jared Goff to me is a totally mediocre quarterback. There was a time where I thought he was a top 10 guy. I'll admit that. Probably like his second and third season were his peak. But recently he's been very average, and he's turning the ball over quite a bit. I have a lot of trouble believing the Rams will go deep into the playoffs with him at quarterback. Number 10, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They showed a little life in the fourth quarter against the Kansas City Chiefs. To me, Tom Brady does not have a full grasp of this offense, and he's not been able to take full advantage of the pieces around him. Rob Gronkowski had a great day, but I think that shows that Tom Brady is still very much attached to the way he's doing things in New England with Rob Gronkowski and with Bill Belichick. So now that you're in Tampa Bay and things are a little bit different here with Bruce Arians and Mike Evans, he's having trouble adjusting there. And the reality is Chris Godwin and Mike Evans were so much better last year with Jameis Winston throwing them the ball. Mike Evans has a lot of touchdowns this year, so don't get me wrong. In the red zone, Tom Brady's been much better for him than Jameis Winston ever was. But throwing the ball deep and moving the ball downfield, those guys thrive so much more with Jameis Winston last year than with Tom Brady this season. And Brady's still having a very good year, don't get me wrong. He's got like 28 touchdowns already. He's doing very well. The issue is that their turnovers have been there, and frankly, he's not taking full advantage of the receivers who should be doing much better based on their past production and based on their talent level. Number 11, the Indianapolis Colts put up a little bit of a fight against the Tennessee Titans, but clearly got outmatched at the end. The biggest issue for them is they can't run the ball. They don't have any top receivers, really. Philip Rivers has played much better here and really salvaged his season in the past 5 or 6 weeks. But without DeForest Buckner, they could not stop Derrick Henry. I like the defense still with Darius Leonard and DeForest Buckner. That's a great unit, I think. Although the secondary is a little questionable. Frankly, they just don't have the offensive firepower to counter a team like Tennessee or Kansas City or even Pittsburgh. So I don't view the Colts as a very deep playoff team. And they might get bounced from the playoffs before the year ends. 12, Arizona. I like Kyler Murray quite a lot. I think he's going to be a top 10 quarterback for years to come. I love DeAndre Hopkins. This is a top 3 receiver. And Kenyon Drake's a top 10 running back at this point. The issue is that they got outcoached. Cliff Kingsbury got flat out outcoached by Bill Belichick, and they designed up some defensive play calls that Kyler Murray just wasn't able to take advantage of or wasn't able to perform well against. He got outcoached, he got outplayed, and they lost to New England this past weekend. And to me, that speaks about the holes in this Arizona team. The maturity isn't there yet. They're still learning quite a bit, the coaching staff as well. So to me, this is a team that will be competitive for years to come, but not this season. This season, even if they make the playoffs, I think they'll be roadkill in the first round, and then we'll go on from there. But Arizona, bright future, but potentially not this year. 13, Miami, talking about a bright future, but not this year. This is a team that falls in the same category. You lose to Denver, they pulled Tua. Tua's thumb injury is becoming more of a bigger concern. Originally, it was thought he might even play this past weekend. He didn't. He played Fitzpatrick instead. And the others are concerned that maybe he's not even going to come back for the next couple of weeks. He might end up with Fitzpatrick at the helm for a couple of weeks here, which wouldn't be the worst thing, because Ryan Fitzpatrick's had a solid year for them. The bigger issue to me is what it is for Tua's development long term. What if he only plays a couple of games this year, never really gets to see the field enough, and he basically walks into next season as basically repeating his rookie year over again? I have questions about the development of Tua. I have questions about Tua's ability to play in big games because I haven't seen him, frankly. I mean, he's played, 3 games this year, 3 starts? I can't call what Tua is yet because I haven't gotten nearly enough time to see what he is. And performing and making the playoffs at this point maybe isn't your biggest concern. I think the biggest concern right now would be getting Tua healthy and just helping him develop. Focus on making the playoffs next year. Minnesota Vikings. This is a team that's coming back and will probably finish the year with 8 to 9 wins. They are performing much better here in the second half of the season. Mike Zimmer's really got his group playing well. Although that loss to Dallas is definitely going to smart for quite a while. Kirk Cousins is really reviving his reputation after some awful opening weeks of the season. Dalvin Cook's been phenomenal. What else would you expect? Harrison Smith is terrific defensively, so is Eric Kendricks. The Vikings are climbing back towards 800, but probably not going to be a playoff team this year. Same thing with the Patriots. They're going to probably be around 800, but they're not going to be a playoff team. That's not a knock against Bill Belichick or anyone on that roster. Frankly, Cam Newton has had a terrible year. His game against Arizona was the worst. He had posted the worst passer rating of his career. So potentially the worst game of his entire career. You really can't buy into that and ask me to think that that's a playoff caliber team. I know they're making a little bit of push here. I don't think anyone expects them to actually make the playoffs. I certainly don't. This is not going to be a playoff caliber team. And you're just going to have to sit back and, rebuild, change quarterback, and try to figure something new out next year. They do have a little bit of a favorable end of the year schedule. They play the Chargers, then the Rams, then the Dolphins, and the Bills, and the Jets. So all right, maybe it's a little bit of a difficult schedule, but I think the Chargers and Jets are wins. You honestly do have a good chance to beat the Rams and the Dolphins just based on being able to outcoach their coaching staffs there. I think the Bills, this game is definitely a loss, though. Baltimore at 16. This is partially because half the team roster is basically on COVID. So basically, half the stars are pretty much gone. That's why they're down this low. They're also bleeding from the last couple of losses. I think they will turn around. I like John Harbaugh as the head coach. I have a lot of respect for Baltimore. They'll get this fixed. But I think they're probably going to lose to Pittsburgh this week and then pick up, like I said, 5 wins in a row, finish the year 11-5, and make the playoffs. The Browns got a win against Jacksonville. They're 8-3. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are saving this team. Jarvis Landry had a good game, too, against Jacksonville. Myles Garrett was missed the past couple weeks. He's coming back. It should help Cleveland out. But frankly, I have no faith in Baker Mayfield. Despite he put up good numbers against Jacksonville, he actually watched the game. Incredibly wildly inaccurate. Did not see the field well. I have many concerns about Baker Mayfield. And frankly, I think that will be ultimately what sinks his team in the playoffs. Congrats to Kevin Stefanski, though, for getting the Browns to 8 wins. I mean, as a rookie head coach, that's phenomenal for him. So big props to Kevin Stefanski for what he's achieved so far. I just can't see the Cleveland Browns going much further than where they're at right now. And that means no deep playoff run. San Francisco at 5-6. I give a lot of props to Kyle Shanahan here for getting his team to this point in the year. I didn't expect them to be this competitive this late, especially with all the injuries they had. They don't have George Kittle. They don't have Jim Garoppolo. They just got Raheem Mostert back, though. They just got Richard Sherman back. This is still going to be a competitive team. They're not going to make the playoffs, but I can see them going 8-8 here. And I'll just pull up their schedule real quick because the 49ers deserve a lot of credit for what they've done here in a very competitive division. Being able to not lose their hope and not lose their grit. I mean, they're only 1 game behind the Cardinals right now. And they play the Bills this coming next week, so that's probably going to be a loss. But then you get Washington, Dallas, Arizona, and Seattle. I mean, you could pick up 2 or 3 wins there potentially. And I don't think 8-8 is out of reach here for San Francisco. 19 Carolina. Carolina's had a lot of close games this year. I think if Christian McCaffrey is healthy for the entire season, they'd be much closer to maybe a 6-win team. I think they could be 6-6 right now if they had McCaffrey. Next year, in year 2 of the Matt Rule era, we'll see how it changes. I think they'll be a very competitive team, a much better team. The question mark is, can they just make that jump? Because they look very promising so far, but there have been so many teams in the past that have had that promise and just never gotten competitive. Houston, what can I say? They have Deshaun Watson and nothing else. I mean, really, Will Fuller got suspended for them recently, so did Bradley Roby. This team was set up to fail by Bill O'Brien. They're trying to rebound here. A lot of credit to Deshaun Watson for what's going on in Houston, but there's no way they're going to do anything special this year. Same in Atlanta, set up to fail by Dan Quinn. Still performing well. They had a big win against the Las Vegas Raiders. Congrats for that. And they did without Julio Jones or Todd Gurley. The question is for me, I mean, where do you go from here? I think this team has to rebuild. I don't think there's a way you can win with this current roster. And that's just unfortunate for Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, but I think Atlanta's days as a playoff team are done for the near future. Washington, with Alex Smith, this is the hottest team in the NFC East right now. I think Washington is going to win this division, especially because the New York Giants, who have at 23, have a very hard schedule to end the year. So Washington 22, New York 23. And that's especially with Daniel Jones potentially being out. The Giants could be even further down this list because I don't believe in Colt McCoy being able to save this team and help them make the playoffs. Number 24, Los Angeles Chargers. This is about Justin Herbert. He's performed very well, but he's been struggling in late game situations. Anthony Lynn has been managing games horribly so far at coach. I like Anthony Lynn as a head coach. I really do. I like him as a head coach. But he's poorly managed games in crucial situations. The Chargers are a very talented team. They should be a top 10 team in terms of talent, in my opinion, but it just has not come together for them. Chicago 5-6. They're the worst 5-6 team in the league. And they are awful. You saw the defense get picked apart by a good Green Bay Packers offense recently. That defense was really the only thing saving this team, keeping them from falling further down the list. Chicago has been terrible. The offense is one of the worst in the league, one of the worst historically. They were at 25, and it's only because Dallas is at 26. The Cowboys think Mike Brady has a chance to get fired this year just on how poorly they performed. Dallas is a mess. The roster needs total reconstruction here. Zeke Elliott has not lived up to the expectations of a massive contract extension he signed. There are a lot of problems right now in Dallas. And the head coach, Mike McCarthy, is the main problem. And I don't know how they're going to get to that. And Jerry Jones as well. Jerry Jones is also a very interesting situation. So I don't know how this is all going to work out here for Dallas. I don't think it will. Detroit recently fired Matt Patricia. That's all I have to say. Their future can only get brighter from here because of that, but it's going to take a year or two before they actually start figuring something out. Another team is probably going to change coaches soon. Denver 28. And need to play with a practice squad wide receiver this past weekend. What do you expect? Of course, they got blown out by the New Orleans Saints. Philadelphia 29. I already talked about Doug Pearson, so I'm not going to spend too much time here. I'm also losing my voice, and I have a nurse show later today, so I don't want to keep talking too much longer. But Philadelphia 29, they have looked awful. They are trending downward. They have the least momentum of anyone in that division, including Dallas. So they are down here at 29. 30, Jacksonville actually came very close to beating the Browns this past weekend with Mike Glennon at quarterback. Glennon's going to be quarterbacking in Week 13 for them as well. I'll see how that works out. But Jacksonville competing for a Justin Fields spot, I believe, in the 2021 NFL Draft. The Bengals at 31, no momentum whatsoever. Brandon Allen is your quarterback, and whether it's Brandon Allen or Ryan Finley, I don't care. You're probably not going to win a game the rest of the year. Zach Taylor's an awful head coach. He should be fired. They need some new management there. You know what? A new owner wouldn't hurt either, but they're not going to get that. Speaking of needing new head coach, management, and owner, the New York Jets are, of course, number 32. They haven't won a game this year. Yeah, I don't even know what you want me to say about the New York Jets. This is a team that needs a major roster reconstruction, especially defensively. The offensive line is decent. I like Mekhi Becton. He's done really well this year, especially compared to what I thought I was going to do as a rookie. But they need help in the offensive line. They need a running back because Frank Gore is not going to be able to run the ball forever. I wouldn't mind some receiver help as well, though I think the receiver core is decent. We all know Sam Brown's not going to be the quarterback there next year. It's going to be Trevor Lawrence. So this is the worst team in football, and it's not even close. Well, I'm going to close the show off there because I do have something else I have to do today, and also I'm losing my voice. I don't want to do that because that's going to be a big problem for my show later and also for the show tomorrow. Quick reminder, the NFL show is on every day at 1 o'clock during the weekdays. Me and Mike. Mike's usually not here for my co-host, just isn't here today. He'll be back on tomorrow, and we can talk about our predictions for Thursday Night Football as well as recapping the Steelers-Ravens game. So that's on at 1 o'clock tomorrow. I'd like to remind you, we are sponsored by Manscaped.com. Promo code TGT20, 20% off and free shipping on your orders. Helps us show out quite a bit. So please, if you're going to spend holiday money, why not spend it at Manscaped.com? But anyways, thank you guys. I will see you all tomorrow for the show. You've been watching The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak. Thank you for listening. We will see you all.